two motorbikes sped past them, rushing towards the back. Just as they were about to collide, the riders quickly changed direction. But their control had limits. The boys were having fun, while the two girls screamed in fear. The drivers, Old Black and Gale, didn't understand the girls' panic. They pulled away and tried again. But this time, something went terribly wrong. There was a crash, and several people were thrown into the sea. The impact left one of them with broken bones, his legs covered in blood. The black man was knocked unconscious and began sinking. Fortunately, Kyle saw him and quickly rescued him. Everyone struggled to get back onto the motorboat. After treating the injured, Kyle tried calling for help, but they were too far from any signal. To make matters worse, one of the motorcycles was destroyed, and the other couldn't hold 5 people. Jalen and the injured man had no choice but to stay in the water, hoping a passing boat would rescue them. Minutes passed, then hours, but no help arrived. Jalen knew they couldn't wait forever. She planned to leave some of the men at the original spot and take the injured man to a hospital. But when Kyle tried to start the motorboat, it wouldn't turn on. The earlier crash had damaged it. Kyle checked the engine and realized they had no tools to fix it. As he worked, he slipped and almost fell into the water. The others helped him back up. With no other option, they had to stay where they were and hope for rescue. Jalen took out her phone, trying to reflect sunlight in case someone saw the signal. But Millie told her it was useless. It was already evening, and no one would be out at sea. Worse, they were drifting farther from the coast. If they couldn't find a way back, they were doomed. Jalen checked her phone for a signal and accidentally saw messages between Kyle and his best friend, Millie. Realizing he had been keeping secrets, she confronted him. Kyle tried to grab the phone, but Jalen refused. The tension between them grew, but before they could argue further, Millie interrupted with a scream. "Shark! Shark!" she yelled. Old Black, who had decided to swim ahead to find help, was still in the water. He heard their screams but didn't understand at first. Then, in an instant, he disappeared beneath the waves. Everyone panicked, thinking he was dead. Then, suddenly, the shark appeared right beside them. In fear, some people accidentally fell into the water. Millie, who couldn't swim, was in the most danger. The shark circled her, and she screamed. At the last moment, Kyle jumped in and pulled her to safety. Luckily, the shark didn't attack. But as Kyle got Millie onto the boat, Jalen and Gret were still in the water. Jalen immediately dove back in to save Gret. But before she could react, the shark attacked. Blood spread in the water as Gret became its target. Kyle had no choice but to return to the boat, but Jalen was stuck, her hair had tangled around Gret's watch. She struggled as they were both pulled deeper into the sea. Jalen knew she had no choice. She ripped her own hair to free herself. The watch finally came off, but Gret was already gone. The shark had claimed its victim. Running out of air, Jalen struggled to the surface, where Kyle helped pull her back onto the boat. Meanwhile, Old Black had spotted a ship in the distance. He swam toward it, shouting for help, but the people on board didn't hear him. As he swam closer, a massive shark suddenly appeared in front of him. Desperate, he dived underwater to hide, but the shark followed. Then, out of nowhere, it attacked. The shark's powerful jaws clamped down on him, and he screamed in pain. The people on the ship finally noticed something was wrong. But it was too late. Old Black had become the shark's prey. The remaining 3 on the motorboat, Jalen, Kyle, and Millie, realized their chances of survival were slipping away. Millie broke down in tears, convinced they were going to die. Kyle tried to calm her, but fear was spreading among them all. By 3 p.m., the sun was blazing. They were exhausted and dehydrated. Millie, desperate, tried to drink seawater, but Jalen stopped her. "Seawater only makes you more thirsty," she warned. Kyle worked tirelessly to fix the boat, but nothing worked. As night fell, they stayed huddled together. The darkness around them felt more terrifying than the day. The sea was eerily quiet, and they had no idea what horrors awaited them next. The sea made them nervous. Would they make it out in time? Suddenly, Jalen saw a dim light. She and Kyle shouted, but no one responded. The distance between them and safety kept growing. Jalen suggested that Kyle swim directly to the light. As the only man, Kyle couldn't refuse. He hesitated, knowing there were sharks in the water. He moved cautiously, but suddenly, something moved. It scared him, and he quickly swam back. Jalen couldn't believe how useless Kyle was. She had no choice but to go herself. Luckily, she made it without any trouble. But when she reached the light, she saw that the person floating there had already died. It seemed he had been attacked. Shocked, Jalen returned to Kyle. They went back to the damaged motorboat, feeling exhausted. The sun slowly rose over the horizon. Just then, they noticed the dead body floating toward them. There were a few pieces of wood nearby. They decided to use them as a raft. They even removed their life jackets and put them on the wooden pieces. Jalen and Kyle tried to paddle toward the shore. But they had been without food or water for too long. Their strength faded. Then, the worst thing happened, a shark appeared. It bit Jalen's wooden piece. Kyle tried to fight it off with another wooden board, but the shark wouldn't give up. Suddenly, the shark bit Kyle on the leg. Jalen quickly wrapped his wound. Their only hope was to fix the boat, but they had no tools. Just as they struggled, the shark swam nearby again. They couldn't afford to relax. They stared at each other, waiting for the next attack. Suddenly, Antoine, who had been with them, sank into the water and disappeared. The bad news wasn't over. The three of them fell into the sea, and the shark attacked. Kyle was seriously injured. With Jalen's help, he managed to grab onto the motorboat. But Millie, who was still in the water, wasn't so lucky. The shark bit her lower body. She coughed up blood, turning the seawater red. Jalen tried to save her, but it was too late. As the camera turned, Millie's lower body was completely gone. Jalen cried but had to let go. Kyle was shaking with fear. He realized he might be next. But his survival instincts kicked in. He broke a piece of the motorboat's seat. As he did, something unexpected happened. The movement caused a heavy object to fall. She realized the motorboat's engine had no fuel because the gas pipe was broken. But without spare parts, there was no way to fix it. Then Kyle noticed their life jackets and got another idea. And bravely jumped into the water. He managed to grab the gas pipe. But at that moment, the shark appeared behind Jalen. The shark didn't attack right away, it swam straight toward the motorboat. It was after Kyle. Jalen rushed to help, but the shark kept its eyes on him. Kyle realized something: if he didn't act fast, he was doomed. He knew his only chance was to fight back. Took a broken piece of the boat and stabbed the shark. The shark opened its mouth wide in pain. Seeing this, Jalen climbed back onto the motorboat. She quickly connected the gas pipe. The engine roared to life. Jalen and Kyle were finally moving toward the shore. But the nightmare wasn't over yet. The shark was still chasing them. Dana pushed the engine to its limit, but the motorboat was too damaged. It was getting slower. If they didn't escape soon, they would die in the water. At that moment, Kyle made a tough decision. He was weak, but he jumped into the sea, willing to sacrifice himself. He wanted to give Jalen a chance to survive. She didn't want to leave him, but Kyle was determined. Blood from his wounds quickly attracted the shark. Before she could react, Kyle was dragged underwater. Jalen screamed, but she had no choice. She had to keep going. Then, another disaster struck. The motorboat hit a rock. The impact threw Jalen into the water. She struggled, swimming as fast as she could toward the shore. As she reached the beach, she turned back and saw the terrifying sight of the shark stuck between the rocks. It was finally trapped. Jalen collapsed on the sand, breathing heavily. She grabbed a handful of sand, making sure this wasn't just a nightmare. Then, injured and exhausted, she got up and walked away from the place that had almost killed her.